Fruit Cove, WVOB.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks.
I'm Emily Hicks, and you're listening to the Elder Law Hour, where we're offering insights and solutions for today's seniors so you can age with confidence. We have a great show for you today. We're talking to Travis Dauchy about how you can use estate planning to leave a legacy for your family that's more than about just money. Then we're going to be discussing how you know it's time to hire an in-home healthcare provider with Sean McHale. And Brittany Darling is back with me, and we're talking about how to name legal guardians for minor children and the top 8 mistakes parents make when naming legal guardians. But first, I want to take a moment to recognize that today we gather to honor Veterans Day, which is a very solemn occasion to express our deep gratitude to the courageous men and women who have served our nation. Originating from the end of World War I, this day pays tribute to all veterans, recognizing their sacrifices and unwavering dedication. I hope you'll join me to reflect on the profound courage displayed by those who wore the uniform, defending our freedoms with resilience and sacrifice. Veterans Day is not just a ritual, it's a heartfelt acknowledgement of their service. We must also remember that honoring veterans goes beyond today. It's a commitment to supporting those who have returned home, ensuring they receive the care and opportunities that they deserve. So thank you, veterans, for your service. Your sacrifices are the foundation of our freedom, and today we are united in profound appreciation for your enduring commitment to the land of the free and the home of the brave. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. And I am here with Brittany Darling, who is with Emily Hicks Law. And
hi.
Hi, Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us today. You and I are going to talk about something that affects a lot of parents, but is also affecting a lot of grandparents these days. And that is about naming legal guardians for children, for minors, right?
Absolutely. We're going to talk about the 8 common mistakes that parents and, like you said, and grandparents make when naming legal guardians.
That sounds good. Okay, well, let's get into it. You're gonna take the lead, and then we're gonna talk about each one.
That's right. So the first most common mistake that people make is they only name one person. So Emily, in our law firm, we recommend that parents name 3 to 4 people. So can you talk us through why it's important to name more than one person?
Absolutely. When you name one person, you're really just putting assuming that nothing in life is going to happen and that person is going to be healthy and available and in the same circumstance that you think they'll be in when you start planning with your documents. But that's not always the case. You need to make a list. You need to we recommend 3 or 4 people. And you also need to prioritize that list of first to last. It's like you really choosing who is your top choice and go down from there, and don't pull any punches. You want to make it very, very clear that this is who you're prioritizing and who that person is, perhaps your relationship with them. But if you only name one person, you're really leaving it up to chance that, what if something happens to that person? They may not be available. Their circumstances may change, and you may feel differently about them in 5 years from now. So it's always important just to keep it up to date, make it extremely clear, because this is it's a very big deal. When you're, talking about handing over your children to to someone to raise. I mean, I can't think of anything harder. I can't think of a harder decision than that emotionally, and just thinking about, oh gosh, if you can't be there, who's going to be that person that's going to carry out your wishes and really stick to the type of parenting plan that you've envisioned for your family? So yeah, super important. Make sure you have a list and make sure you have prioritized that list and indicate your choices from first to last. That's what we recommend.
Awesome. So this kind of leads into mistake number 2. And on a personal note, when me and my husband were looking at guardians, we chose a couple as our number 1 choice. And your mistake number 2 is, what if you've named a couple to be the guardian and that couple got divorced and we had to change our plan? So, tell us why it's important when thinking about naming a guardian, maybe pros and cons of picking one person versus picking a couple.
Well, a lot of people, that's exactly how you start thinking of it when you think of who do you want to raise your kids. If you're a married couple, you're going to automatically think of another married couple. Perhaps it's a family member, brother or sister, and their husband or wife. I mean, that's certainly the case for most of us. I mean, you want your kids to be raised by someone that would be in the most similar circumstances to you. But the problem with that is a lot of couples get divorced, they get divorced. I mean, with the divorce rates as high as 50%, that makes it a little bit murky for us. Okay. Like you really want to think of your choice as an individual rather than a couple, because usually when you're making this decision, you're thinking about one person. I mean, you may think of, if it's friends, like I get it, it's more of a couple, but like for me, for instance, with my sister, okay, I would want my sister to be the legal guardian of my children. If I name my sister and her husband and something happens to her, maybe she dies or they get a divorce, I don't want there to be any question of who my actual choice was. So that's where it can get a little bit murky. You can name a couple as your legal guardians, and then you would just need to specify a little bit more detail in the documents. And we do that for people because a lot of times people do want to stick with that. I understand you have, if it's a friend, if it's family friends and you want to have the couple named, then we just then go on to specify, okay, if the couple divorces, we want you to move on to our next choice, or we want the kids to go to this person, this half of the couple, this individual, or, just however you would want that scenario to play out. If one person dies, do you still, is he still going to be your choice at that point? So you really want to outline just a little more detail in that circumstance, but it's certainly a lot easier if you name an individual, because that really takes care of that scenario.
Yeah. So number 3, consider life changes and life stages when naming guardians. So what is a mistake that people have a tendency to make when naming guardians and not really thinking through the longevity of the plan?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that has to do with aging parents or your first choice. When a lot of time passes between having a baby and the child, growing up. I mean, you've got a full 18 years of circumstance within that time frame, right? So when you, at least for me, I think of when I first had my children, the very first choice that I had for my legal guardians were my parents. That was just, and I think a lot of people feel that way with when you have babies. you want, you think of your mom, you think of who can take care of this baby, because at the time too, my sister, she had young children. So she had 4 young children. So I couldn't imagine her having now 7 kids. That would be quite a lot of children for her to handle. She could do it, but if you have your parents available, then you think, well, that's the perfect choice, right? But the reality of the situation is, as parents get older and things occur, at least with me, and as you all know, my mom developed Parkinson's, and that choice was, quickly, we had to rearrange. It was like, okay, she's not available anymore. So you really, so much time passes between birth and 18 years old when you have aging parents or friends or aunts and uncles. Whoever it is you've named, a lot of life happens within that time. So you really do need to consider the life changes from a health perspective, but also just like we were talking about before, divorce and death. And there's just so many things that can happen between those times. So it's not a set it and forget it. You may as with all estate planning, that your choice just may change, not due to anything that your wishes changing. It's just circumstances change, life changes, and we just never know. So absolutely don't set it and forget it. Just keep it up to date with what's going on with your choices.
Yeah. So let's move on to mistake 4. I think this one is a really important one to talk about, because personally, I didn't think about this as a choice for me when I'm deciding about guardianship. When you choose a person, a couple to take a very serious responsibility with your children, they also need money to do that. But what if they're not quite responsible with money? How do you approach that? And is there a way to kind of guard finances while taking care of the kiddos?
Absolutely. This is a good one, because a lot of people don't know that this is actually available, just like you were saying, because when you think naming the guardians, you think, oh my gosh, they're going to, if you have life insurance in place, for instance, oh my gosh, these people are now going to have like $1 million to do with whatever they want. And it's really scary. But, sometimes there are 2 different functions, with taking a guardianship. It's called guardian of the person and a guardian of the estate. And it can be, these 2 things can function within the same person. You don't have to separate these, but if you have someone that would be a perfect caregiver for your children, but they can't balance a checkbook, or they can't, maybe they're just not great with money. It happens. So you want to separate those functions, and you can absolutely do that. And the way you do that is through your nomination documents. You can have a guardian over the person and a guardian of the estate, and the estate meaning the money. We encourage people to do that to have a little more checks and balances if they feel like they need that. It really depends on the circumstance of the family and the person. A lot of times it's certainly a lot easier to have one person be doing everything, but you have to really trust who you're nominating in that situation to be able to do both. And sometimes it's not going to be the same person, but you can absolutely have someone handle the money and a separate person handle the caregiving, because a lot of times the 2, they don't always mix, and you want to do what's best for the kids. So if you can separate the 2 functions and not have that person that may be a little loose with the purse, having all the money, then, absolutely do that, because it's certainly possible. You can certainly do that.
Yeah. It makes me think about being willing to have honest conversations with those people, and maybe setting feelings aside as well. That could be a really tough conversation to have with the person that you want to be the guardian, if that's a different person that's going to be the guardian of the estate. So we'll encourage everyone out there to just have honest conversations up front, and just let everyone know what your position is, what your desires are in light of anything happening. It's going to be super important just to be honest up front.
Absolutely.
So let's keep going on the money conversation. So mistake number 5 that we want to talk about today is making sure that money is immediately available to the children and to the guardians. Let's talk about that.
Well, that's where the beauty of the trust is really comes into play. You know, if you have a will, as you know, if you've listened to anything that I've said on the show, I talk about it, I feel like every episode, that will has to be probated. And the beauty of, especially when you have young children, think of, just think of the court process, like think of, how long that would drag on, and how difficult it would be for the person who you've nominated as your personal representative, let's say, of your will, to have to, administer all these things. And there are things that they can do to get money available quicker, but there is nothing quicker than a trust. There's nothing better in that circumstance than a trust, because the way a trust works is you name a successor trustee in the document. And when or if something happens to you, you become incapacitated or you die, that person can step in immediately. Nothing else has to happen on the court side. There is no judge involved. There is nothing involved. They are now stepping into your shoes, and they have access to run your household, the trust assets, everything the way it needs to be done. And that is super important when you have young children, because they're very expensive, Brittany.
They are, especially if your kids are in private school. Those payments come around, and sports these days are their fall sports, winter sports, spring sports, summer sports. It's really important that the guardians have access to be able to continue the things that the children love.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the worst case scenario is, let's say you've named somebody that doesn't have a lot of money on their own. Maybe they're on a fixed income, or they're already pretty financially strapped, and that's the person you want to take care of the kids. Well, they then have to come in and foot the bill for a little while until they get access to the money. And that's a big burden. That can be a really big burden, especially when you have multiple children. Like I said, they are expensive. I mean, I have 3 girls, and it's like, between just the clothes alone, can we just pretend that the town center does not exist? But
right.
Nothing against the town center. It's lovely. But my kids have discovered some really nice stores there. And that's, I gotta keep that in check.
It's tough.
But yeah, it is. So, the benefit of making sure the money is available right away when you have young kids, I mean, it's just super important. You want life to go on as seamlessly as possible. Obviously, that's not going to happen, from a practical standpoint, but, with the money, at least, that's one thing that we can control. That's one thing that we can set up to avoid as much hassle as possible. So yeah, that's where your trust is really important.
Yeah. So mistake number 6, I wasn't aware that you could do this. So you can exclude anyone confidentially that that you do not want to have as a guardian. So tell listeners what that means.
So it's a document that we put together for people in case they have some crazy relative that thinks they are the perfect choice for guardian for your kids. And I joke about this, when I talk to families, like we all kind of have, maybe that crazy Uncle Bob, because I have an Uncle Bob. So he loves this scenario. And I'm like, crazy Uncle Bob thinks that he should be guardian of the kids if something happens. But he's not your choice. He thinks he's the choice. But if you have something like that, or maybe there's a stepmother situation involved. Like I have a client who has an ex that is remarried, and surprise, surprise, they don't get along. She doesn't get along with the stepmother, and she really, really, really feels very strongly that she not ever be in a position to become a legal guardian over her children. So we put together, it's called a confidential exclusion. It's something that we just put together and you have it. It's never going to be used unless the person actually petitions for guardianship. So it's not a conversation that you have to have with that person. Okay. You don't, it's not like, I wouldn't really suggest, going around at Thanksgiving and saying, hey, you're excluded. You're excluded. You don't have to talk about that. Yeah. But yeah, it's certainly something that you can do. And understand that this process is about making your wishes known, because you are no longer available to talk to. Okay. Keep that in mind. So this is about documenting as much as possible to show what you would want to happen. And that's where this would come into play.
Yeah. So let's talk about mistake number 7. So the mistake is that families don't make an emergency plan or name a temporary guardian to take immediate care of the kids.
Yes. So this comes into play most likely when you have permanent legal guardians that do not live close by. So let's say you've just moved from New York or, Ohio or wherever you've come from. And the people that you want to be your permanent guardians are perhaps back in New York or wherever, and you don't have anyone that's close locally nearby that can step in, that's where we recommend filling in that gap with a temporary guardian. So, that person then has the legal authority to step in if an emergency happens and take care of the kids. It's everybody's nightmare, but if you put that plan in place, so it kind of covers the gap, because a permanent guardian that lives in another state is not going to be available in an emergency situation. So That's really where the temporary guardian comes into place.
Yeah. And along those same lines, we're going to just go right into number 8, is to put the plan in writing and put it in a place where people can find it.
Yes. And that's a big issue for all of the estate planning documents. People want to use safe deposit boxes and things like that. And I really don't recommend that, because those usually just belong to you as an individual. And if you think the bank is going to just let anybody into your safe deposit box, it's not going to happen. So keep it somewhere that is safe but accessible is kind of my little tagline on that. Somewhere in your home. A lot of people have fireproof safes, and that's fine. Keep it somewhere that everyone who needs to get a hold of those documents has access to it. You've let people know how to get them, because otherwise they're useless.
Yeah. Well, I think this has been super helpful, Emily. Thank you so much for talking about the 8 common mistakes that parents tend to make when deciding guardianship for their kiddos.
Well, thank you, Brittany. And let's get all of your stuff updated if you need it.
Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. You've been listening to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. And thank you, Brittany, darling, for being here. And we will be right back. Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. I am here today with Travis Dauchy, and Travis is a partner at Atlas Private Wealth Advisors, and he helps individuals and families and business owners and executives with their estate planning, retirement planning, tax planning, and also business transition planning. So today I have him talking about estate planning because it's one of my favorite subjects, as you guys, anyone who has listened to this show knows. So Travis, when I sit down with a family, and I'm sure, you do this as well, we really start talking about what their goals are for their family. So when you sit down, how does your typical meeting start when you are approaching the estate planning topic with a family?
It's a good question. And there was obviously a lot of pre-work that goes into this. I look at estate planning as a mark of success. You've done the work to have the resources to have an estate. So it's a question of what are your objectives, keeping in mind, these will be some of the final directives that you get to make. So make them good. It's a reflection on all the hard work you've done over a lifetime. So, sure. I look at it from also how the estate is being created. Was it saving assets? Was it real estate? Was it a business that was built? Was there another inheritance that came in that became the estate that you're starting to plan for? And there's some more creative ways. Sometimes people use certain types of life insurance and other things to create an estate almost out of thin air. So there's a lot of different ways these can be started, but when you're looking at the objective, some people approach it from kind of a minimalist standpoint. I've got to check some boxes here. I want the family to get all the money. I think the shortest will I ever heard of was found from hundreds of years ago. It was written on a stone, it said all to wife. It was, the basic version. But the sky's the limit. Yeah. The sky's the limit on things you can do. I've worked with people who thought about this, and I think the major risk factor when you're looking at estate planning is actually the risk to the family at the time, either your diminished capacity or if someone had passed, what happens. There's countless examples of families kind of imploding.
Yeah.
I've got situations where 70-year-old brothers don't ever talk again, and it's a real shame. There's simple planning that could have gone to address those concerns and kept the family together. Kind of an example I put on a little pedestal because I helped work on this was an individual who thought about that, and the key thing they had done their whole lives was, for his kids, for the grandkids, was do vacations together, was spend time together as a family. They were very tight, they were very close, and his top objective was to continue that. So when he sat down and did some of his planning work, he thought ahead and said, listen, I don't want to hand people piles of cash. He had done a great job saving, had great assets set aside, no retirement issues, but looking over the horizon said, the thing I want if I'm not in the room is that the family stays tight. And I want them to go on these trips together, continue to have these adventures together. So in effect, he has pre-funded decades worth of family vacations with the caveat, if you want the resources, if you want the money, the resources that come with this estate plan, you got to show up. So that's a message to the grandkids. That's a message to the newly born great grandchildren. to the children of his. That's how this money was intended, was to subsidize their time as a family, their happiness. And I would say they're one of the tightest families I know because of it, because that was his goal during life, and he did the estate planning work to continue that. So I hope you take some inspiration from that and think, don't look at estate planning as a chore. Look at it as, this is a win. This is an opportunity that if you take it by the horns, it can have unimaginable positive influences if you wanted to.
I love that example. And I really love that story, and the fact that your client had the forethought to think through, keeping the family together, because I, preach this all the time when I meet with people. It's not just about who gets what. It's really about keeping those relationships close, keeping the family together. Because unfortunately in this business, you see a lot of the opposite. You see a lot of fighting over things. You see a lot of ambiguity with wills. They're not always, you should see, you laugh, like I'm laughing at the one liner, will, but you should see some of the stuff that I see off of LegalZoom. It's people that think, okay, I'm going to just get online and do my will today. And they bring it in and I'm like, oh, no, this isn't going to work. You can't possibly, you're not going to become an estate planning, professional overnight on a website. Like there's so many things to think about.
And a lot of these are people who are incredibly successful in their world. They ran major companies. They've handled massive things. They don't know what they don't know, and they stumble into these issues you're describing, and they just don't know the impact of it. They don't put the time and effort you would put into running those other things into what you're describing. Is start with the basics, but also have a good plan, have a good strategy. So yeah, I'd love to kind of hear what you like to do and how you tend to go and approach it.
Of course. One of the main things that I recommend, especially for our clients, such as, who you just described, is our living trusts. They are hands down one of the tools that we use that is so flexible. It's so, it's easy to create. It's incredibly, it's just as easy to create a trust as a will. And people think, there's really this, this false assumption about trust that, you hear a lot of the trust fund, kids, or the trust fund this. And trusts are really about the kind of trust that I am talking about right now that most people use in their estate planning. It's a revocable living trust, which means it's going to be created during your lifetime. You are going to create it. You're going to control everything. You can move assets, into it or out of it. Really what we're doing is retitling those into the name of the trust. It's incredibly easy to manage and to deal with. It really doesn't change your life at all. However, once you pass, it makes things so much easier for your family. Just the main, objective of these types of trusts is avoiding probate. And that's a really important thing to save some money and to save some hassle for your family. But also, when you have a will, let's say you've just done a will, and that's all you've got, and you die, and that will has to go through the probate process because the court has to bless it, with, all of the terms and who you've nominated as the personal representative, or you may know it as executor. All of these things have to take place, to actually authenticate the will and make sure that everything goes the way you want it to go. But the way the court process is it's very easy to contest a will
it's very, I mean, because the way it works is you have to give notice to everyone, and someone can very easily just say, you know, object to it, or, you know, contest certain pieces to that. It's very difficult to do that with a trust. You know, if you want to contest something having to do with a living trust, you're going to have to hire a lawyer. You're going to have to do a lot more on your own and spend some of your money to try to, you know, figure out, you know, what's going on with that. But so that's a great thing about the trust, is that it really keeps that bickering. I say it does. It can.
Used correctly.
Can keep the fighting to a minimum if it's, you know, properly drafted, and, you know, and obviously it depends on the family dynamic, but it's such a great tool to use because it's just a wonderful, you know, like, just like you were saying, one of the conditions or one of the contingencies and what I'm assuming was his trust is that they show up. You know, you're not going to be able to fund this vacation if you don't show up. It's not going to be just for you to go to Mexico with your buddies. Like,
family trip, you know, the tickets are in the mail for that day.
Yeah.
You know, things are set there. And I would say the big part of it too is in this trust process, it's thinking of, if for whatever reason you're not able to make all the decisions, who's your contingent trustees? Who's the backup here? Is it a spouse? I've had some people who elected their older brother. Well, guess what? You know, he's 97. You know, he may not be in the position to take over, you know, when you have some issues going on. So you gotta look at
backups, folks.
Yeah, you gotta have a backup plan. And I would say more than anything, you want to start these a lot earlier than you'd anticipate. Is people wait before they start down this path, and that's the mistake. You want all your faculties, you want all your decisioning and your understanding capabilities to be sharpest when you plan out your long-term objectives. I see it too many times. People are in assisted living or long-term care facilities trying to figure this out. They've got major medical issues. They got all these other problems that are happening. Their ability to comprehend and make effective choices are diminished. That's a mistake. That's not approaching this early enough. You know, get on this stuff early, and it's a box you've checked. You've done the pre-work. Everything is in order. You don't have to guess if it's done right. You did it right when you did it. So it's you know, you review these things, but don't wait, I guess, is my message on this. And I encourage everybody to start with this stuff is one of the first things they approach.
Yes, absolutely. I can't say that enough to people, is let's do this now while you're healthy, because you may not always be. And, you know, people don't want to face that. It's really hard to envision that when you are healthy. You know, no one wants to think about what could possibly happen to them. But, you know,
I take it the other way. I have them think about what happens to me. You know, if something happens to me and I'm managing your money, you know, do I have a backup plan? Do I
exactly?
Wouldn't you expect that I'd be able to hand this over and have a smooth contingency process? When they
That's
say
actually a question I get quite often too. Yeah, people are like, "What if something happens to you?" Like, don't worry, we all have a plan for that.
We all have, and ours it has to be written. You know, there has to be. You know, it's backed up. But people, again, very smart people who've done all the other pre-work, don't give this enough attention. And if they do, a lot of times, like I said, they're giving attention much later than they should. This feels like work, but it should be a priority that you guys approach, and don't underinvest time in it. Like I said, these are some of the most important decisions that'll affect yourself, your family, and really your legacy down the road. So give it the time and attention that you give your most important things, because that's what it's going to affect.
Absolutely. And that's very well said, because I mean, it could impact future generations. I mean, that's not really an understatement. I have a really sweet, she's probably one of the nicest, if not the truly nicest person I've ever met as a client. And it's her wish. So she was in a second marriage, and they each had daughters from, the previous marriages. And their one wish was for the daughters. They had a falling out, and they wanted the daughters to come back together. So we created this plan, and I won't reveal any identities, obviously, because we hope it works.
Yes.
We created this plan for after she passes, that we put together a plan for the daughters to take a trip to Paris together, because apparently that's a really fond family memory, and to do certain things. And she's given them instructions on what she wants them to do and spread her ashes. And we probably have the ashes spreading in a place that's illegal in Paris, but we'll see. That'll be up to them to figure that out. But she had this wonderful plan, and with the whole idea of, I hope that they can find their friendship again. I hope that they come back together. And I really hope it works too. I can't wait to really see what happens, because, like you said, I mean, that impacts, there's so much that affects the family, and then that's going to affect, their children and their families. And it just has a ripple effect throughout the generations. And I think it's a wonderful thing to think about, the legacy that you're leaving. There's a lot of great tools that we have available to us nowadays, so we should definitely take advantage. Travis, thank you so much for being here. That was a really, really great way to have people start thinking about what is their, what legacy are they leaving behind, and how they're going to help accomplish that through estate planning. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them?
Yeah, the easiest way is to call me. It's, again, Travis Dauchy at 949-244-9568. Again, 949-244-9568. Or to send me an email. It's tdauchy, TDAUCHY, at Atlas, ATLAS, PWA, AtlasPWA.com. Thank you.
Great. And so we'll also put that information on elderlawhour.com if you want to head on over to the website and get in touch with Travis there, or get more information about this show. So Travis, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Take care.
Welcome back to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. I'm so excited to have Sean McHale with us today. He is the owner of St. Michael's Home Care, and we are talking all about in-home care. So Sean, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Emily. Appreciate you being here.
And thank you so much, because I love this topic so much, and I think it's so helpful for our listeners. Let's talk a little bit about what a home health care provider can do for people, because most people that I speak to think they're, it's just maybe at the end of life stage, or maybe when they are at a certain point physically that they can't do anything anymore. But it's really so much more than that, right?
You're right. It is. And we work with so many different individuals, and they're all different. Every single person we work with is different. Some people need the home care, and some people just want the home care. So there's a big distinction. We've got some people that are recovering from an illness or an injury and they're coming back from rehab, and maybe they only need to have a few days of care if they have a knee replacement and they're just trying to get reacclimated back home. And then we have other individuals that, of course, may be under hospice care. They may be bedbound, that need a lot of care. So in regards to the services, again, we can provide services, help with any of the activities of daily living, the ADLs.
Yes. If you could, please explain activities of daily living, because that's an important topic to talk about when we talk about what kind of services you can qualify for, on my end, when we're looking at, where you are physically, and what the doctor has said you can do. That really determines a lot about how we proceed with your long-term care plan. So what are those activities of daily living?
So the activities of daily living would consist of anything that really requires someone to provide assistance, some hands-on assistance with things that you do every day. So those things would include helping with a bath or a shower, getting dressed, lifting if someone needs to be transferred from, let's say, a wheelchair to a bed or vice versa, helping with toileting, changing if someone is incontinent, those types of activities. Anything that would require hands-on care would be an activity of daily living. And I'm sure, as you know, a lot of those long-term care insurance policies require at least 2 activities of daily living to meet the requirements to file a claim. So the 2 most common activities of daily living that would meet those requirements would be helping with a bath or a shower and transferring, helping someone stand up if they're unsteady on their feet due to fatigue or muscle weakness. Those are usually the 2 most common that would help qualify someone for their long-term insurance claim.
Oh, that's so true. It really does set the stage for, where you are in terms of how things are going to be covered or not. So what about, what about those that, perhaps just need someone to come in and help, like around the house? Is that something that we're looking at?
Absolutely. And so that's where it really opens up as to what a home health agency can do. And, a lot of the people may have that misconception that, well, home care is only if I am bedbound or if I need help with a shower. But there's a whole lot more things that we can do, like with some light housekeeping. I always remind our clients, we're not a housekeeping service, but we can do things like throw in a load of laundry, fold the clothes, put them away, change bed linens whenever they need to be changed, make the bed each day, clean off the countertops or any dishes that may be needed or used to be cleaned. Meal preparation. There's so many people that will just eat these frozen meals that are just packed with sodium, and it just is not really that healthy.
Yeah.
And our caregivers can create fresh meals, whether they be a soup and sandwich, even, something simple, but, even some salads, or get some fruit that we can wash and clean and make it nice and easy to eat. Another couple services too is transportation to doctor's appointments or to the grocery store, or, again, like I mentioned earlier, some of our clients just don't drive and they want someone to take them to the post office to drop off something in the mail, just because it's an outing. They want to get out of their house.
Yeah.
And, we've got a client of ours, and a woman that loves every Sunday, she takes her caregiver to the movies. And she used to have a routine with her husband, who just recently passed, and she lost that outing. And that was a fun thing for her to do. And so our caregiver has really stepped up and filled that void for her. And so she is continuing to do those things that she used to do that gave her joy.
Well,
So
That's a wonderful example. Yeah, because, I believe it was the AARP came out with this study of the number one problem with seniors, and it was isolation because of lack of transportation. That's such a big issue for people as they age and they can no longer drive. I mean, you're really just dependent on who's going to come see you and if they will take you somewhere, and for your outings. So I'm really glad that you brought up transportation, because that's just a really isolating thing for people. And it's a really big problem. And then I, in my opinion, and I'm sure the studies would back this up, is, that just affects your mental health as well. And then, you can physically decline, from there. So that's one of the main functions as human beings, right? Is connection and having people to talk to and things, that you want to do. So I'm really glad that you brought that up and that your agency provides that. But I cut you off earlier. So what were you? You're going to continue talking about some of your services.
Well, I think that any agency, if you're looking to talk to an agency about getting care for a loved one of yours, is you make sure that the agency understands that person, your loved one, on a personal level. Have them know what your past career was, or favorite places you used to go, or anything about you that makes you unique, things that you enjoy doing, whether it be playing games or board games or cards. Or we've had a gentleman who was a former professional golfer, and we took him out to do a putt-putt when it just, he was crying afterwards because he said, I never thought I'd be able to pick up a golf club again. And so if an agency doesn't know what makes those loved ones tick, then they're really doing the agency a disservice and your client a disservice. So we try to learn as much as we can about those people we're providing care for. So if there's anything that we find out in the community that they're doing, that we want to try to have them be a part of it. I know even if there's an air show that may be coming into town, and we've got some people who are in the military that would love to see something like that, but they just can't get out of their house. Great opportunity to go and plan a trip for something like that. So really important to make sure that you sit down with those caregivers and they know the human side of those people that you're providing care for. So the caregivers should, it's not just, I'm going to walk in and just check the boxes of these tasks that I'm doing. They really want to get to know that person and make them feel good, make them feel happy, let them know that when the caregiver walks in the door, that they're excited that the caregiver's there, and they're not thinking, oh, great, this person's here, this is going to be trouble. So you really want to make sure that everybody's aware of those fun, intricate things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a really great point, is to make sure that your caregiver really understands the activities that you want to continue to do, because like we said, that's a really tough one to continue doing, especially after you stop driving. So this doesn't have to be. It sounds like there's a lot of different ways you can have home health care services. It doesn't have to be a full-time thing or part-time. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility with the timing and what you do, correct, Sean? I mean, you guys can pretty much tailor it to whatever it is that the client needs, it sounds like.
You're right. And, there should never be any cookie cutter plan for every single person that we provide care for. As I mentioned, everybody is different. They're different with not only the services they need, but how they want those services done. I learned very early on, when I started doing this almost 17 years ago, that there is more than 100 different ways to make a bed.
Oh my.
And we have some people that you think, oh, just make the bed. But some people want it nice and tight. Some people, you throw the comforter over, it doesn't matter. But some people, if it's important to them, then it's important to the agency. And the agency should know those things because they, want to make sure that they're putting the right finishing touches on that care. I always say that when I meet with new families and talking about care services, I always tell them, you're never going to have the caregiver walk in and say, all right, there is a new sheriff in town and here's how things are going to get done. It's the opposite. We want to learn about people's routine. And if they want to have the caregiver come in and say, all right, sit on the couch and we're going to have a cup of coffee and we're just going to talk about the day, then if that's what they want, then that's how we should do it. We have other clients that the moment the caregiver walks in the door, it's all right, let's get moving. We got a busy day today. And that's fine too. So the agency should work at the same speed as the client. But again, as a family member, if you're looking into these types of care services, make sure to give that information to that agency, and they should accept it with open arms because the care is all about the individual. And we want that individual to be safe and happy. And if we're not doing that, then there's a problem. We need to make a change. So always make sure you're talking to them about those services and what you want to get out of the service.
Yeah, that's a great point because, you want it to be compatible. I'm sure you have, certain matchups that you look at. You want those people to be compatible, and routine becomes so important. I have found for people, when they're no longer working, let's say in a 9 to 5, they quickly establish another routine, and it becomes so important for people to stick to that routine. So I can understand how that would be really upsetting if you had someone that came in and really tried to shake that up and really, just messed up that equilibrium in the house, because it's a delicate thing. You want your loved one to feel safe and secure, and also have that wonderful companionship that they can provide too. So yeah, routine seems to be just a really important thing to establish as you maybe it's no longer provided to you by an outside authority, but you generally usually create that for yourself. So it sounds like you guys really take the time to understand what the person wants and what the loved one needs.
You're exactly right, because again, when you're working with an agency, and you have to understand that they could be there for a long time. Your loved one may need care for not just weeks, it could be months, it could be years. So you want to make sure that agency understands your loved one on that personal level so they can grow with them as your loved one's needs change down the road.
Yeah, because you never know. You just never know what's going to happen. I say that all the time, and it's just so true. I mean, there are people that need care for numbers of years. I mean, it's, and then, also when there are two people involved, one may need a different level than the other. There's just so many different scenarios that could play out, as you age together. So this has been really, really helpful. I think it's answered a lot of questions that people have about home health care and what the range of services are that can be provided. So, Sean, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how is it best to contact your company?
The best way, the easiest way would just be to go online. stmichaelshomecare.com is our website, or you can Google St. Michael's Home Care, and probably the easiest way to find us.
Great. And we will also have a link to Sean and his company on elderlawhour.com. If you are going to shoot on over there after the show to get some more information, then we'll have a link provided for that as well. So Sean, thank you so much for being here today. I think this was really helpful, and I think we provided a lot of valuable information.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks. Join us this and every Saturday for the Elder Law Hour with Emily Hicks.
AM 600 W.